Hey y'all, it's good to be here. Like Parker said, my name's Lisa. I also professionally go by Nifty. It's kind of like my hacker name. Had it since I was 13. I'm here today to talk about one of my projects, which is Base 58. Give you a short background about it. I've been started calling it an engineering school built on a Bitcoin standard. Cool. So just a little bit about me, about what we're doing at Base 58, kind of our story of where we came from, what we've been doing the last couple years, and what we're hoping to kind of aim for going into 2024 and beyond. So just a little bit about me. I am a native Texan. I grew up in Houston, in East Texas. Did a little bit of a stint up in New York and San Francisco, learning about how to work on programs and do programming stuff. Got into Bitcoin in 2018. I got a job at Cash App, thank you, Jack Dorsey, working on a Bitcoin backend. So that was my first introduction to Bitcoin, et cetera. Very quickly fell down Bitcoin from a technical rabbit hole perspective. Ended up getting hired by Blockstream in 2018, the same year. So 5 months after getting into Bitcoin, I got hired to work on the Lightning project at Blockstream. So I was a core Lightning kind of core member for about 5 years. Still contribute every once in a while to the project, but I went on a sabbatical about a year and a half ago now to work on Base 58 and some other projects. I got my start teaching other people technical topics when I was 13. Year after I took geometry, I started tutoring other students in geometry. So I spent about a decade as a tutor before I started learning how to program. I also did Isaac in college, which is kind of like a whole thing, but if you know what that is, it explains why I run international conferences. And I'm a graduate of the Recurse Center in New York City, though technically I never graduated. It's kind of an inside joke because you don't ever graduate from the Recurse Center. Okay, cool. So that's a little bit about me. So this is about Base 58. We started it in Houston in 2021. I guess this was during the middle of the pandemic. Started hanging out with some Bitcoiners in Houston and started teaching them everything I knew about Bitcoin just for fun. We'd meet up once a week, and there was a whiteboard. This is actually, I think this is a picture of the room we would hang out in, which is kind of cool. Found it on the internet. And decided that it's fun teaching friends, but maybe it would be more fun to make it more available to other people on the internet. So in 2022, we put up our first ever kind of hung out a shingle. I'm teaching online classes about how Bitcoin works. We offered a 6-week class where I would teach you all about how transactions and kind of an intro to cryptography is. Our very first class had 10 students, which is very exciting. And then by the end of the year, we had taught over 50 students through these online class cohorts. I forget now. I'm really bad at remembering things and numbers, but I think we did like 4 6-week cohorts in 2023 or 2022. So that was 2022. I have the wrong number there. That's 2022. In 2023, I decided I was going to try and pivot to in-person classes and not doing the online cohorts as much. So these were 1 week in-person classes. It's a lot harder to get more people to come to Austin or Texas and do in-person classes. So we saw a lot less throughput, but I also launched 2 new classes. I started doing a Taproot class and a Lightning class. We only had about 25 students last year, so it was pretty small. That's just like the in-person cohorts. But it was a great crew. We get some really great people coming through Base 58, which is cool. This year, I'm trying to focus more on getting a bunch of more curriculum built out. Shipping it as online classes, so people don't have to show up in Austin. You don't have to sign up for a 6-week class. You can just do the same online homeworks and work through all the videos online on Udemy. I finally got the first 6-week class material up online as 2 online classes. So if you want to see what our original 6-week class is like, you can now go through it on Udemy. There's 2 classes up there. This is the second one about crypto and digital signatures. We had over 1,000 signups our first week of launching. Probably helps that I gave it away to the first 1,000 people. But for some context here, I really did not think that I would get 1,000 signups, if that makes sense. I think I launched this like maybe a month ago now. And on Udemy, it's not my favorite platform. I'd love to move off of it. Haven't had time. It does an okay job for what it is. But they let you do 1,000 free giveaway, and it's only for a week. I thought maybe we would hit 300 people signed up, and we got 1,000 people that signed up for the class in 36 hours, which is pretty cool. So That was pretty exciting. Yeah. Udemy is great because it does analytics for you, which I have mixed feelings about as a privacy-focused Bitcoiner. But this is a map of where all of those signups came from, assuming most people weren't using VPNs. We got a pretty international reach. Number 1 was the United States. Number 2, I believe, was India. Number 3 was very surprising. I actually had someone reach out to me about it. It was Vietnam. It was number 3. Okay, that's fine. Number 3 was Vietnam, and I think number 4 was Argentina. So it's kind of a cool thing of where are future Bitcoin developers in the world, or people that are interested in learning about Bitcoin development. They're all over, literally. Not in Russia, though. Okay, cool. So that's kind of like the story of where we were, where we're coming from, where we're headed. Kind of like, okay, so what's our goal? What are we building towards? One thing is like, so when I started Base 58 in 2021, I'm not sure how many people remember exactly what was going on in the Bitcoin development world, but I would say that it was kind of at a point where Craig Wright had like, I don't know if he had just putting out, he was like putting out, what do you call them, court cases. There was a lot of stuff in the news and a general feeling in Bitcoin development that all of the old wizards that had been around forever were falling out, that working on Bitcoin Core wasn't fun anymore, like it was kind of this like risky thing. And there was this big question of like, where are the next people that are gonna keep working on Bitcoin Core? Where are they coming from? This is a really important project. Who's building the pipeline for developers to work on it? And I think that's like a really important and difficult question. I think that Base 58 is also like not only like, okay, where are we getting more devs to work on Bitcoin coming from? You know, kind of this pipeline, but I think the ecosystem is bigger than just Bitcoin Core, right? There's lots of projects in Bitcoin that need help. And it's not just working on Bitcoin that I think is important. Bitcoin is a consensus protocol, right? So when we as like people of Bitcoin, especially technical Bitcoiners, which is kind of my tribe in the Bitcoin ecosystem, when I think of like, okay, you know, if we're moving Bitcoin as a protocol forward, you know, there's talks about soft forks, what should we add to Bitcoin? How should we change it? Those are really difficult technical conversations. And if you don't have most people that are participating understanding what's actually being discussed, like if people don't really understand what it is that we're talking about proposals and changes, because the people who propose them are a pretty small group. I'd say it's like, you know, usually it's the experts that are working at the Bitcoin protocol are in the 10s to 20s, right? It's like a very, very small group of people, but the decisions and changes that they make affect like, you know, thousands, millions of people as we move forward. So if we're having these technical discussions and there's only less than 100 people that can really understand it, what does that mean about consensus in Bitcoin as a technical project? So it's like, if we can make understanding how Bitcoin works technically more accessible, easier to find good information on, and really accurate, right? Like really good, accurate information, hopefully that means that we can keep Bitcoin as a consensus protocol where everyone has a good understanding both of what's being proposed in the protocol as well as how that's going to impact them, right? So I think that's, you know, it's, yes, it would be great if we can get more developers working in Bitcoin, but from a larger perspective of like keeping the community at a point where we all have a good understanding of where we're headed and why we're headed there, I think getting more people really understanding and making it easy to be able to get access to information about how Bitcoin works is kind of like the bigger project of why I think this is such a cool thing to be working on. Cool. Right, so this is, I guess, you know, like we come together to talk about Bitcoin and Socratic seminars, et cetera. Those conversations are really important, and we want people to be able to participate at a point where they're actually like contributing back and feel like they have an understanding of what people are talking about, which I think is really important. Okay, cool. So this is just kind of my quick list of, you know, we don't have a lot. We have a lot of online students. Online students, it's a lot harder to get to know them, but we have had a good number of in-person students or online students that I've got to know. These are some of, we've had a lot of really great people come through that are doing cool stuff. I just want to highlight a couple who've gone on to do projects. I feel like Base 58 was a project that they did when they were getting into Bitcoin dev, and they've since gone on to do kind of cool other projects. So just kind of want to highlight some of our successes. Cody was in Cody Lowe, probably, I don't know, some of you might know him, maybe not. He works at Fedi as their head of dev and product. I'm gonna forget exactly. He doesn't do product stuff. He does like their community outreach for developers and stuff. He's a really great Bitcoiner. He was in the very first batch of Base 58 and managed to end up working at Fedi, which is cool, in less than 2 years, I guess. Austin is another local Austinite. He went through Base 58 early in his Base 58 career and now runs PlebDevs, which is a online Bitcoin Core, Lightning, learn how to build apps on Bitcoin. He's another, basically, I guess, instructor in the Bitcoin space, so that's really cool to see. And then we had another student come through named Ben. Base 58 was the first ever like programming class he took, which I'm not sure I would exactly recommend. He had so much fun though, he decided it was great. He ended up going to a coding boot camp afterwards to learn how to code like React and front end stuff. And ended up getting onto this project called Saving Satoshi. He got a grant from Chain Code to keep working on it, and now he's the lead, kind of like the core contributor. So you can see how he started in, I guess that's middle of 2022, maybe? Yeah, he took Base 58 in 2021, 2022, he started contributing, and so he's since become like the core dev on this project to teach other people how Bitcoin works too, which is cool. Anyways, okay, so that's some of our successes. Some cool student projects. So where are we going? Kind of like one of the projects, again, something that I really like doing is kind of like making a map of the territory of what there is to learn in Bitcoin is kind of what I'm currently focused on in Base 58. And that sort of means working through this complicated chart of new courses that I want to get out in curriculum, et cetera. There's a lot of stuff to know about Bitcoin. The protocol is pretty complicated. So I've kind of made a roadmap of where we're headed with new classes in Base 58. Trying to give you an idea of where we are currently. These are the two online classes, are kind of this first entry point here. I've got a bunch of work ahead of me this year, so that's kind of where I'm planning on focusing. Hopefully a bunch of my efforts in 2024 is getting all of these class curriculum written and available as online classes that you can take and go through so you can learn about all the different parts of the protocol. Right, so kind of where are we headed? Technically, I'm writing a book. I don't know if that's actually, anyways, working on a book and getting more courses done. Another thing I really want to do is kind of scaling our reach with our existing classes by hoping to get more people teaching classes for Base 58, expanding our instructor set. So it's not just me. Maybe bring back online cohorts so people can go online, go through online classes in groups. There's a couple of reasons for that. One, I like people to get to the end of things, and I find like, doing an online class by yourself, some people are really good at that, some aren't. So providing people with like a group that they can go through together, get their questions asked. The other thing that's really great about having cohorts is it gives me and the instructors at Base 58 an opportunity to get to know people. And I feel like, building those relationships is really important for one, keeping people in the ecosystem long term, as well as making them kind of more aware of other opportunities, and networking is just good. And then we're really hoping to become the go-to institute for Bitcoiners that want to level up their technical skills, et cetera. So it's kind of our goals. And then some other like new stuff for us. We're turning into a nonprofit, so we will be a nonprofit education school based in Austin, Texas, which is exciting. I'm on the board along with two Base 58 students. Cody's on the board, as well as Chris Guida, who is a really great Lightning dev. Cool. Okay, what else have I got? Yeah, so hopefully being a nonprofit means that we will be able to get a lot more students into our classes. Hopefully we'll be able to maybe find money for scholarships so we can help people get through classes, pay for them to go through. I've got some ideas about how we can really make Base 58 a good platform for building and scaling new Bitcoin talent, and really becoming like maybe the institute that then teaches all the other teachers that teach more people about how Bitcoin works. So really the golden standard, or orange standard, I should say, of Bitcoin dev is kind of what I'm hoping that we're able to build. Cool. So if you want to find out more information, we're on Twitter at Base58BTC. We're also on Nostr, but I don't know what our impub is. I think you can, I think you can search for it, or at base58.school. Yeah, I think that's everything. I don't know where I'm on time, but. Okay, great.
All right, questions for Nifty. All right, got a couple back here, 3 back here. This makes it efficient. I'm going to start with Simon.
Thank you, Parker. Hi, Lisa. What does it mean to program Bitcoin in 2024? What are Bitcoin programmers doing all day long?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it really depends what project you end up on. So a lot of I would say kind of the stuff that we teach isn't programming necessarily, like Bitcoin programming. We teach how Bitcoin works, like, how does the protocol put together? And once you learn, with the idea that once you learn kind of what's happening and what's going on in Bitcoin, then you can go work on all these different projects. And what that actual work looks like is very different. I think it depends on, kind of who's got funding to be paying devs to be building stuff, what kind of open source project you ended up finding. I think there's lots of devs that work on Lightning protocol implementations, for example. So that's like helping solve bugs that people have in Lightning, adding new features, talking about new specs, etc. It could be that you're working on Bitcoin Core, so you've found a bug or you have a new feature you want to add to that. A lot of the new jobs that I've seen coming into the space are so I hate to say it, on the more ordinal side of stuff, and the new layer 2 things are kind of like coming in and need new developers. And so those devs really need to understand how Bitcoin works because they're building on top of it as a platform. But what kind of projects and features and new stuff they're shipping is just, from what I've seen, is all different.
Hi, I'm Justin. Thank you. Are you mostly focused on the Bitcoin Core protocol, and are there any layer 2 solutions that you find interesting at this point?
Yeah, so the one that I've got kind of on my, I don't know where my curriculum roadmap is, like page back, this one. I have Lightning up here, but that's because I worked on Lightning, so that's like the easiest thing for me to explain. I definitely have other stuff that I feel like, or there's definitely layer 2 protocols that I think are interesting. It's probably a whole space to do, like what is a layer 2, what I consider a layer 2. Apparently that's a topic of much discussion and debate, but picking like a couple of protocols that I think are cool and going through them. Cody, who's on our board, works at Fedi. He's really passionate about educating people about how Bitcoin works, especially Fedi and Fediment. So Fedi's like a really interesting and cool project. I should probably write a blog post about why Fedi's so interesting and cool as like a protocol expert. But so like, I could definitely see us adding a lot of Fedi stuff. There's interesting stuff over on the Liquid side with confidential transactions and all of the opcodes that they've got for introspection. ARC is interesting. I know the ARC guys. Yeah, so I think, yes, there's definitely a wide range of layer 2 stuff that's definitely on my radar and that I find really interesting, but isn't on this immediate list yet. Maybe 2025, we'll see, I don't know.
Somebody else over here had a question. We got a one here.
Is your class for any age? Like, could I go ahead and learn how it really works?
I would say yes, probably.
Okay.
I think the thing about the classes that make them hard, especially if you aren't really familiar with how computers work, is that we do, and I like to think that I've got some good information about some go through kind of the basic stuff of how the basics work so you can build the block, but do like building blocks all the way up. I think the thing about it that's hard if you don't already know kind of how some things in computers and programming work is that then you have to learn that in addition to all the new information about how Bitcoin works, right? So the new stuff that you have to learn is just a lot. It's not impossible. I think Ben Allen, who worked on the Saving Satoshi project, is a really great example of how it is possible to kind of bootstrap your way into it. But I know that he took a lot of Cody's time kind of to help get him and get his environment set up and get his stuff moving, as well as he said he later went back and redid the classes because I sent out all the videos, and he said the second time he went through, it made a lot more sense. So I think with this stuff, as with anything, when you're learning it, you're like, maybe this is just good advice in general. When you're learning a new thing, it's going to take a couple times of going through the material, and that's just, I think, a really good expectation to have of yourself when you're going through new stuff. Like, if you're trying to learn about Bitcoin, like maybe the first time you read Mastering Bitcoin, you get 50% of it. Second time you go back, you get closer to 80, 90%. I think Base 58 stuff, I think we do a great job of explaining things. I think it's really reasonable to expect people to need to go back and wait a few months and then go back through it to just really get all this stuff. Ben's such a fun, I love Ben's story because anyways, Ben's probably the first person who took both my transactions class and then the Lightning in-person class, which is just funny because anyways. he went back through the class, and when he did the class online, we had left these little bounties on testnet of like 1 testnet Bitcoin for every person in the class, which if people know anything about testnet Bitcoin, they're quite hard to get these days. So that's like a pretty good prize, and some people hadn't claimed them. So when he went back through the class like a few months later, he spent time figuring out how to like reverse engineer what everyone's, where the Bitcoin that weren't taken yet, how to like steal them for himself. So he ended up like, after going back through it with like a handful, like 3 or 4 like full testnet Bitcoins, which is pretty cool. So yeah, anyways, I guess that case, him going back through the class had a real like net benefit.
Yeah. Other questions? Cameron?
Hey, Lisa. Being a developer in Bitcoin, you can deal with some prickly folks, and I think also the software can be a little bit tough to work with. So I'm curious, in your mind, what's the vision for the future for, getting this dev pipeline? It's really easy to come in as a developer at, a big tech company. They tell you, here's the tools, here's how to use it. What's that environment looking like, 2024, 2025?
Yeah, I think that's more like, so I think I see that as kind of like a tooling challenge. So like, if you guys were here for Startup Day yesterday, I think there's a really cool project that came through called BitScript. They're really working, I think, really hard on building out some great, like, it's like the interfaces and the dev tools and like, okay, if I'm in Visual Studio or if I'm programming on Replit, like, how can I get access to tools that will help me spin up Bitcoin nodes, run them, that sort of thing. So I see Base 58 as more like the organization that's going to explain you what all of that stuff is doing and what all the parts are and why they matter. And that I think the tooling ecosystem is still nascent, still pretty young. And so I think there's definitely a good opportunity there to build out tools and platforms and stuff that all of these new devs that are coming in are going to need. So.
Hey there. I'm pretty new to Bitcoin. I've got a question for you. I read this the other day. Guy says, what is worse is when there is a wrong line of code and it gets exploited. Some of those 20 devs, like you were talking about, actually call it out and write a fix. But the maintainers block the merging fix because the attackers consider it controversial, and everybody just pretends that things are fine. Give me your thoughts on that.
That's a great question. So I think what you're kind of getting into is like, what gets into like the mainline branch can be, I think, a little bit of I'm going to call it a political process. I think as developers and as technical people, we like to think that there are concrete, correct answers and definite definitions of things that you can use as like your North Star for what belongs in where and how you're going to move a protocol forward, et cetera. But having worked in protocol and spec development for a long time now, for over 5 years, not Bitcoin Core, but on the Lightning side, I think one of the things that really starts coming home is how important, I'm going to call it political process of consensus matters. So while, while there are, if you want to change to get into a big project, calling things bugs or pointing things out, et cetera, definitions, whatever, I think a lot of that ends up basically coming down to, what is the consensus so that people have the permission to say okay on the main line, and if you don't like what they say, are you going to fork it and run it yourself, that sort of thing. So I don't think there's like a cut and clear answer. I think that there's a lot of responsibility with people with mainline access to make sure that they're building towards a common vision, but I think that can be difficult, particularly as the number of people participating in the protocol grows, et cetera. And that's why I think like kind of these classes with Base 58, and one of the things I think I took it on my slides, but one of the things that I think is really important about getting people into Bitcoin and engineering is not just explaining like how Bitcoin works, but why it works that way, and the reasons that it's been constructed in those particular ways, like what are the justifications, what are the design goals around the protocol, because I think that sort of understanding of the context of decisions is really helpful for helping people come to consensus around what the protocol should look like and what goals and designs it should serve going forward for the future.
One last question for Lisa. All right, I'll ask the last question. What makes the hallmark of a great candidate for your courses, and separately to attend one of your conferences?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's people who are curious and want to learn more. I find that people, like curious people, tend to really like the stuff that we do in Base 58. People that just want to figure out how to get the job done and move on with their lives tend to get, I think, a little frustrated because we spend a lot of time explaining how things work. So yeah, if you want to understand it, also I think having, like I said earlier, having some technical experience beforehand is really useful. I don't want to say like if you're not a technical person you won't have a good time, but probably not exactly the starting point for you. But yeah, I really hope more people check out our stuff. Hopefully we'll have more classes available both online and maybe in person this year. Kind of been dragging my feet on getting all that stuff out the door this year, but cool. Thanks everyone.
Wait, Nifty, I got one last.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, just to follow up on that question, what sort of background knowledge should somebody have before taking a class?
Yeah, that's a good question. We use Python in the classes, so if you've done, and we don't like write Python programs. This isn't a programming class. Like we don't, at least not yet. Someday maybe we'll have programming classes. We are trying to be an engineering school, but right now we're just focused on how Bitcoin works. One of the things that I think is really helpful is if you've done maybe like the 100 days of Python on Replit, might be a good place to start if you're new to programming. I think if you can get through, I would guess probably like day 50. You probably don't need to get all the way to the end of it. I say that not having done it, so I'm not really sure how far I would say you need to go. But like if you're new to programming and you want to like get your feet wet, the 100 days of Python programming on Replit is where I would start. After that, I would say come do the first Base 58 online class on Udemy, because we use Replit and we do it all in Python, which is cool.
All right, let's give Lisa a hand.